The farmhouse sat at the edge of the woods, its windows glowing faintly against the blanket of night. Inside, laughter spilled from a back room where 5 officers gathered after their shift. The smell of stale beer and cigarette smoke clung to the wooden walls. Bottles cluttered the table, cards were scattered, and music hummed low in the background. Jake, Marcus, Donnie, and Ray were veterans of the force, each hardened by years on the job. Beside them sat Vanessa Hart, the newest addition. She was striking, dark hair, sharp eyes, and the kind of presence that could silence a crowded room. The men teased her, raised their glasses, and welcomed her into what they called their private tradition. But Vanessa smiled only faintly, hiding the storm beneath her calm surface. She had been with the department for 6 months, long enough to understand its secrets, long enough to earn their trust. Tonight, she was the only woman among them, the center of their attention. They poured drinks, told crude jokes, and waited for her to loosen. As the hours passed, the men grew bolder. The tone of their words shifted from playful to possessive. They circled her with hungry eyes, feeding off each other's confidence. Vanessa laughed softly, masking her disgust, her mind far away, on the face of a boy who once called her sister, a boy whose life ended too soon on a roadside, his bruises dismissed as resistance. By the time midnight crept in, the farmhouse was heavy with heat and intoxication. The men thought it was their night of conquest. For Vanessa, it was only the beginning. Her plan was already in motion. She was there not for pleasure. Vanessa poured another drink, her hands steady though her mind burned. The men were loud now, their laughter echoing off the farmhouse walls. Jake told a story about a suspect who begged for mercy. The others roared with approval, slapping the table, but Vanessa's jaw tightened. She remembered her brother Micah, 17, thin and gentle, begging in his last moments while these same men ignored him. Her thoughts drifted back 2 years. She had been at college when the call came. Accident, they said, resisted arrest, but when she saw Micah's body, she knew the truth. Bruises laced across his chest, ribs broken, taser burns still fresh. No drugs, no weapon, no charges, just a boy left dead on the pavement. The report had 4 names signed at the bottom: Jake, Marcus, Donnie, and Ray. Each had testified he fought back. Each had sworn under oath it was justified. And the department, desperate to protect its own, closed the case in less than a week. Vanessa screamed, protested, demanded an investigation, but no one listened. The city forgot Micah. The papers didn't print his name. She didn't forget. That night at the farmhouse, she hid her fury behind a careful mask. She had worked for this moment, enduring months of fake smiles and forced camaraderie. The badge she wore had been her weapon, her disguise. Tonight, at last, her role as the obedient rookie would end. The men thought her laughter was real. They thought her presence was a prize. They thought she was theirs. But Vanessa's silence was sharper than any blade. Each chuckle she gave, each drink she sipped, was just another step closer to dawn, closer to the reckoning they never saw coming. The hours bled together in a haze of liquor and sweat. The farmhouse, isolated and hidden, became a cage of laughter, lust, and cruelty. The 4 men passed jokes, as if they owned the night, and soon they acted on the hunger that had been growing since Vanessa joined their ranks. One by one, they came to her. Jake first, his grin wide, his breath sour with whiskey. Marcus followed, quieter but just as vile. Donnie was rough, Ray desperate. They laughed, they jeered. They treated her not as a colleague, but as something disposable, something to share. They thought it was fun, their twisted bond of brotherhood sealing their crimes. Vanessa endured in silence. Every touch, every smirk carved her deeper, but she let them. She let them believe she was broken, compliant, too drunk to resist. In truth, she was memorizing every second, engraving it into her mind so when the time came, her vengeance would be absolute. Outside, the fog thickened across the fields. The night air was cool, silent, in contrast to the furnace inside the farmhouse. The clock ticked steadily toward dawn, but the men hardly noticed. By 3 a.m., their movements slowed, their voices slurred, the room heavy with exhaustion. Vanessa slipped away briefly into the small kitchen, splashing cold water across her face. In the reflection of the cracked mirror above the sink, she didn't see the rookie cop anymore. She saw Micah's sister, the girl who once wept herself to sleep, now hardened into a woman forged from rage. She returned to them, smiling faintly, pretending. They didn't see the shift in her eyes. They didn't hear the countdown already in her mind. Dawn was approaching, and with it, their judgment. By 4 a.m., the farmhouse had gone quiet. The bottles were empty, the ashtrays overflowing. The men sprawled across couches and the floor, half-dressed, half asleep, their snores heavy with drink. The air stank of liquor, sweat, and smoke. Vanessa sat upright in a wooden chair, fully dressed, her back straight, her hands steady in her lap. She hadn't touched her drink for hours. Her mind was razor-sharp, every nerve humming with purpose. She had waited 2 long years for this morning. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small photograph, its edges worn from the constant folding and unfolding. Micah's face smiled up at her, 17, full of life, dreams in his eyes. She pressed the photo against her lips, whispering, "I didn't forget you." Her hand moved to the gun resting beneath her coat. She had cleaned it earlier, loaded it with precision. The weight of it grounded her, cold and metallic, as if her brother's voice echoed through the steel. From the couch, Jake stirred and muttered something incoherent, then rolled over. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. He had been the loudest the night Micah's case was dismissed, smirking as the judge read the words justified. She remembered the sound of his laughter as clearly as she remembered her brother's cries. The farmhouse clock ticked on, each second stretching, each breath pulling her closer to the moment. Fog thickened outside, cloaking the fields in white silence. Dawn was only an hour away. Vanessa rose slowly, slipping the photo into her pocket. She tied her hair back, her face hard, her eyes hollow. There was no hesitation left. Justice would not come from the courts. It would come from her hand, and it would begin before the sun touched the horizon. At 5:13 a.m., the house was silent except for the steady rhythm of snoring. The men were deep in their drunken sleep, unaware that death stood among them. Vanessa's boots made no sound on the old wooden floorboards as she moved toward the couch where Jake lay. He looked almost harmless now, mouth open, chest rising and falling in uneven breaths. But she remembered his smirk, the way he had mocked Micah's weakness during the hearing. Rage tightened her chest, but her hand was steady as she raised the gun. She leaned close, her breath brushing his ear. "This is for Micah," she whispered. The shot cracked through the farmhouse, sharp and final. Jake's body jerked once, then stilled, blood staining the cushion beneath his head. For a moment, there was silence again, until Marcus stirred. He sat up, rubbing his eyes, confusion twisting across his face. "What the, Vanessa?" His words were slurred, disbelief thick in his tone. She turned calmly, leveling the gun at him. He froze, mouth opening as if to protest, but no words came. The bullet pierced his throat. He gagged, clutching at the wound, blood bubbling at his lips before his body collapsed beside Jake's. Donnie woke next, his instinct sharper. He reached for the pistol on the floor near his jacket, but Vanessa was faster. She fired twice, one shot in his chest, another in his heart. His body slumped forward onto Jake's still warm corpse. Ray, half asleep, stumbled from the hallway, panic dawning in his eyes as he registered the bodies. He bolted toward the kitchen, barefoot, his breath ragged. Vanessa followed, calm and deliberate, her steps echoing softly against the farmhouse floor. The hunt had begun. Ray's feet slapped against the wooden planks as he sprinted toward the kitchen door, panic twisting his every movement. He wore nothing but his boxers, his chest heaving, eyes darting like a trapped animal searching for escape. His hands fumbled at the door handle, trembling with desperation. Behind him, Vanessa walked steadily, each step deliberate, her gun raised but not rushing. Her calmness terrified him, more than the bullets already fired. He spun around, back pressed against the door, hands raised high. "Please, please, Vanessa," he stammered, voice cracking. We didn't mean—" Her face didn't change. Her eyes were hollow, fixed on him like a predator staring down prey. "Did Micah beg too?" she asked softly, her voice cutting through the fog of fear. Ray's lips quivered. He fought back. "We had to." The lie ignited something deep inside her. She stepped closer, pressing the barrel of the gun against his stomach. He whimpered, tears streaking down his face. "You had a choice," she whispered, "and so do I." The gun thundered. Ray's body jerked, collapsing onto the floor. He clutched at the wound, gasping, blood soaking the tiles. She watched him writhe, every second a mirror of her brother's last moments. His breath rattled, grew shallow, then stopped. The silence after was heavier than the gunshot itself. Vanessa knelt beside him, pulling the folded photograph of Micah from her pocket. She laid it gently on Ray's bare chest, a reminder of the life they had stolen. Her hands didn't shake. Her heart didn't race. Only a strange calm settled over her. 4 had signed the report. 4 had taken Micah. Now 4 lay dead, and the sun had yet to rise. The farmhouse was still, thick with smoke and the metallic tang of blood. Bodies lay where they had fallen. Jake slumped on the couch. Marcus twisted on the floor. Donnie collapsed across them both, and Ray cooling on the kitchen tiles. The chaos of their laughter hours before had been replaced by a silence that pressed against the walls. Vanessa stood in the center of it all, her gun lowered, her breathing steady. She felt no triumph, no wild rush of revenge, only a heavy, hollow calm. The men were gone, but Micah was still dead. Nothing could change that. She walked to the wooden kitchen table and set down her badge. The small metal shield glinted faintly in the dim light, the symbol of a system that had failed her brother, the very emblem of the corruption she had infiltrated. Beside it, she placed the folded photograph of Micah, the one she had carried like a talisman for 2 years. On the back, written in her neat handwriting, were the words, "Justice was never given to him, so I took it." She signed it with a single initial, 5th. For a long moment, she stood staring at the items. Her career was over, there was no going back. But she hadn't joined the force for a career. She had joined for this night. The first hints of dawn crept through the window, a pale light cutting across the blood-stained floor. She holstered the gun, pulled her hood over her head, and stepped toward the door. Behind her, the farmhouse held the truth. 4 officers dead, their sins finally answered. Ahead of her, the fog waited, swallowing her as she walked into the mist. Vanessa Hart no longer existed. Only the legend remained. By mid-morning, the farmhouse was swarming with flashing lights. Patrol cars lined the dirt road, radios crackled, and crime scene tape fluttered in the breeze. Officers moved in and out of the house with stiff, uneasy steps. The air carried the weight of something too grim to joke about, too shocking to ignore. 4 bodies lay covered beneath white sheets. Jake, Marcus, Donnie, and Ray, veterans of the force, men considered brothers in blue, now reduced to case numbers, evidence tags, and bloodstains. Captain Harris, grey-haired and weary, stood on the porch, rubbing his temples. "Jesus Christ," he muttered, staring at the farmhouse. "What the hell happened here?" An officer approached with gloves stained from handling evidence. "Sir, we found this on the table." He held out a clear evidence bag containing Vanessa's badge and the folded photograph. The captain took it, his eyes narrowing as he read the note on the back, his jaw clenched. "Vanessa Hart," he whispered. The name spread quickly through the ranks, whispers echoing from car to car. Vanessa had been the promising rookie, sharp and fearless. Now she was the prime suspect in the most devastating scandal the department had faced in years. Reporters weren't far behind. By noon, news vans parked along the dirt road, cameras pointed at the farmhouse, microphones shoved toward every uniform. Questions rang out. Was this a betrayal? A cover-up? What motive could she have had? But among the chaos, one young journalist uncovered something buried in old archives, an incident 2 years ago involving a teenager named Micah. No charges filed. Cause of death, resisting arrest, officers involved, Jake, Marcus, Donnie, and Ray. The connection was undeniable, and the story was about to explode. The headlines hit the city like a thunderclap. 4 officers slain, rookie cop Vanessa missing. Every news channel carried the story, each spinning its own angle. Some painted Vanessa as a cold-blooded traitor who slaughtered her own. Others whispered about her brother, the long-forgotten name suddenly resurrected. Micah's photograph appeared on screens for the first time in years. His school portrait, crooked smile, hopeful eyes, flashed beside grainy crime scene photos leaked from the archives. The public gasped at the bruises, the taser burns, the fractures. Talk shows debated endlessly. Was Vanessa seeking justice, or was this calculated murder? One host demanded. Protesters gathered outside the precinct, holding signs, "Justice for Micah, and who protects us from them?" Inside the department, chaos reigned. Files once buried were dragged into the light. Captain Harris ordered silence, but reporters swarmed, demanding answers about the old case. Why had it been closed so quickly? Why had Micah been branded a criminal when his record was spotless? Why had 4 decorated officers walked free? Among the rank and file, loyalties fractured. Some called Vanessa a monster, betraying the badge and spilling blood. Others, quietly, admitted they understood. They had seen cases swept under the rug before. They had seen boys like Micah vanish into paperwork. Meanwhile, Vanessa herself was a ghost. No sightings, no trail, only rumors. Some claimed she fled the state. Others said she'd been seen at a bus terminal, hood drawn low. A few whispered of something stranger, that she wasn't running at all, but watching, waiting. For the first time, the department wasn't in control of the story. Vanessa had forced their sins into the open. And the world was listening. Within days, Vanessa Hart's name was everywhere. Posters with her face, half official wanted bulletins, half street murals, appeared across the city. On one side of town, she was branded a murderer. On the other, she was called a hero, a vigilante who dared to do what the courts never would. Talk radio buzzed with fury. Callers screamed that she had betrayed her oath, that she was dangerous, that no one was safe with her out there. Others countered with quiet, trembling voices. Mothers who had lost sons to accidents. Families who had buried loved ones without answers. To them, Vanessa wasn't a monster. She was a symbol. Protests swelled outside City Hall. Crowds held up Micah's picture, chanting his name. 17. No record. Justice denied. The story had peeled open an old wound, exposing rot the city had long tried to bury. Inside the department, officers grew restless. Some demanded a manhunt. Others hesitated, uneasy with the truth now out in the open. Captain Harris stood before the press, sweating under the cameras, promising an immediate investigation into Micah's case, though everyone knew it was too late. Reporters hunted down Micah's old teachers, neighbors, even his childhood friends. They painted a picture of a boy full of dreams, whose only mistake was crossing paths with 4 men who believed themselves untouchable. The contrast between his smile and the brutality of his death struck like a blade. And through it all, rumors of Vanessa persisted. A woman in a black hoodie seen near police memorials. A candle burning at the site of a traffic stop. A whispered name left scrawled in chalk, Micah. The city was no longer united under the badge. It was split, torn between law and justice, order and truth. And Vanessa stood at the heart of it. Federal agents arrived within a week, their black SUVs lining the precinct parking lot. The city demanded answers, and local law enforcement could no longer be trusted to police itself. Files were seized, computers copied, and every officer tied to Micah's case was questioned under oath. For the first time in years, the truth cracked open. The autopsy report, once buried, showed injuries consistent with a beating, not resistance. Witnesses emerged. A store clerk who saw Micah pulled from his car, a neighbor who heard him crying for help. Their statements, ignored before, now filled the news. Captain Harris stood grim-faced before the cameras, forced to acknowledge what many had whispered. Mistakes were made, he said, but the public wasn't fooled. They saw fear in his eyes, the crumbling of a system built on silence. Inside the department, officers avoided saying Vanessa's name aloud. Some burned with anger, calling her a traitor. Others sat quietly at their desks, wondering if she had only done what they lacked the courage to attempt. Meanwhile, federal analysts tracked every lead. Surveillance cameras were checked, bus stations monitored, bank accounts frozen. Yet Vanessa stayed invisible. Not a single confirmed sighting. But late at night, stories spread, unverified, always whispered. A woman in a hoodie leaving flowers at Micah's grave, a candle lit on courthouse steps. Her presence never caught on film, always gone before dawn. The more they hunted her, the more she became myth. Was she hiding, or was she watching, daring them to chase her? By now, the investigation wasn't only about 4 dead cops. It was about decades of buried cases, families silenced, names forgotten. Vanessa had forced the world to see, and the agents feared she wasn't finished. Weeks passed, and still no trace of Vanessa Hart. The official manhunt dragged on, agents chasing shadows, tips pouring in from across the country. Every black hoodie spotted on a street corner sparked panic. Every anonymous call sent squads racing to empty houses. She was everywhere, and nowhere. But outside the reach of sirens and subpoenas, a different story grew. Street artists painted her silhouette on brick walls, a hooded figure with a candle in one hand and a gun in the other. Beneath it, the words, "For Micah." People left flowers at those murals, as though they were shrines. Neighborhoods whispered her name like a prayer. Mothers told their children about the woman who stood up when no one else would. Survivors of police brutality wrote letters online, dedicating their stories to her. In the eyes of the powerless, Vanessa was no longer a fugitive. She was a force. The department fought back with press releases, calling her armed and dangerous, urging citizens not to glorify her crimes. But the harder they tried to bury her, the more she rose. Protesters marched with her image printed on their shirts, chanting both her name and her brother's. Even within the force, doubts spread. Younger officers asked questions their superiors couldn't answer. What if she was right? Some turned in their badges, unable to reconcile the oath they had taken with the silence they were told to keep. Late one night, a camera caught a blurry figure at a police memorial. A candle flickered at the base of the wall. Beside it, in chalk, a single name, Micah. By the time officers arrived, the figure was gone, the mist swallowing her trail. Vanessa Hart had vanished into legend, and legends do not die easily. By the 3rd month, Vanessa Hart was no longer treated as a missing officer. She was a phantom. News stations still ran updates, but always with the same refrain: no confirmed sightings. Yet the stories persisted. In Chicago, a patrolman swore he saw her watching from across the street during a memorial service. In Detroit, candles appeared on courthouse steps the night before a corruption trial. In Atlanta, a mural of Micah was painted on a station wall, unsigned, but people whispered her name. The federal task force grew restless. She can't just disappear. One agent barked during a briefing, but every lead dissolved into smoke. She used no credit cards, no phones, no vehicles. She was a ghost moving through the cracks, living only where silence lived. Meanwhile, her legend deepened. Songs were written about her. Online forums treated her as a symbol of vengeance, debating whether her actions were justice or murder. Some feared what she represented. Others quietly prayed she would never be caught. Inside the department, morale crumbled. Officers avoided late-night farmhouse gatherings. Jokes that once glorified brutality stopped. Every badge felt heavier, every case file more dangerous. Vanessa's shadow stretched long, a reminder that silence could one day come back with a gun. One evening, a retired officer who had known Micah's case spoke to a reporter. His voice trembled. "She's not running," he said. "She's watching. She'll never let them forget." That night, outside the precinct, a candle burned by the wall of fallen officers. A folded photo rested beside it. Not Micah this time, but Vanessa herself, smiling in uniform. On the back, 4 words: "The dawn never forgets." When officers arrived, the candle was still warm. She had been there. The city awoke to silence. Not the calm of peace, but the sharp hush of anticipation, like the pause before thunder. That morning, every precinct in the state found the same package waiting at their doors. Inside each, a single file, unredacted reports of Micah's murder, transcripts of the farmhouse conspiracies, names and dates, written in Vanessa Hart's precise hand. Every secret laid bare. The leaks hit the media within hours. Networks scrambled to confirm, but the evidence was undeniable. Judges, lawyers, officers, dozens implicated. The farmhouse circle was no longer a rumor. It was fact. Panic gripped the force. Some officers resigned overnight, others lawyered up. Politicians scrambled to distance themselves. Protesters surged into the streets, chanting Micah's name, waving signs with Vanessa's face stenciled beside words like justice and truth. And yet, amid the chaos, no one knew where she was. That evening, at sunrise's edge, a figure appeared atop a courthouse roof. Some swore it was her, standing tall against the glow, a shadow in the new light. Others claimed it was only imagination, a city desperate to believe. Cameras tried to capture her, but no photo was ever clear. She never turned herself in. She never reappeared in public. But her message lived on. The farmhouse had crumbled, the corruption exposed, and the badge forever stained by what it had allowed. In time, Vanessa Hart became more than a fugitive. She was a story whispered in precinct hallways, a ghost told to rookies as warning and prophecy. And for Micah, his name was no longer forgotten. It was etched into walls, into chants, into memory. As for Vanessa, no one could say if she was alive or if she had disappeared into the mist forever. But one thing endured. The dawn had come, and it had her face.